All right, so we're going to get right down to this pad thai. And pad thai, you know, is a very classic kind of dish from Thailand. It doesn't really need to be changed a whole lot. It is what it is. And I don't like to mess with it and add a whole lot of crazy ingredients that it doesn't need, because it shouldn't be over spicy. It shouldn't be overpowering. It shouldn't be over sweet, over sour, too hot, not hot enough. So there's some options there, and I'll talk about that as we go along in the recipe. But right now, I'm just going to kind of get the prep going for this, which is pretty simple. Now, if you guys are doing it at home and you're following along, you need to have some water on the stove and get that boiling, because we're going to have to cook our noodles. And the rest of the prep on this is pretty simple. It's basically cutting up some vegetables and just, you know, measuring some ingredients out. So hopefully you already have all that. If you don't, you might want to start on that before I get cooking, because once we start with the wok, it's going to go really, really fast. So if you haven't gotten that prep done per the instructions that I should have sent out, then you might want to start thinking about doing that. I'm making 4 servings, so I'm doubling the recipe. So don't worry about the quantities that I'm using, because I have to feed Paul, and he's, you know, this guy eats like bird. Like, what does birds eat? 30 times their weight or something?
Big bird.
Yeah, big bird. So he's a big bird. So there's something weird on the screen, Paul. Is that supposed to be there? Or, as long as they don't see it, I'm okay with it. All right. So there's a screen hiding.
We just turned on the recording. We had to hit the record button so people can go back and watch the replay
Very
later.
good. Okay. So move over to the wok. I'm using a wok, but you could use any kind of saucepan to cook your noodles.
Yeah, real quick question. She's from Maria, says, if I don't have a wok, what can I use? That's a great question right now.
A wok, go home. You can't. No, I'm just kidding. You could use a saute pan. You could even use a saucepan, but really something, you know, like a saute pan or any kind of a saucepan that isn't too deep, that you could kind of stir stuff around in, will work just fine. You can actually even do it on a flat griddle. I mean, I've used those flat griddles before.
Catherine asks, can it be used, adjusted for a pressure cooker?
Oh, you know, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I've never done it in a pressure cooker. Pressure cooking to me is usually, you know, something that I would use for things that are going to take a while to cook. And pad thai doesn't. So no, I don't think that's going to work. At least, no, and somebody will, I'm sure, prove me wrong on that. But, you know, the noodles are so delicate and everything cooks so quickly. It's really designed to be sauteed on a high heat or, you know, in a wok. So I can't see it where it would happen, because, you know, the main thing about the biggest mistake people make on the pad thai is they overcook the noodles. So what I'm doing, you know, and you guys should have it too if you're following along, is get your water boiling. So I've got it on a stove, and Paul's going to bring me over to that stove now. I'm doing it in a wok, but you could do it, you know, think of it in terms of like you're cooking pasta, except we're going to boil the water, we're going to shut it off, and then we're going to add our noodles to it. We're not going to continue to boil. And then 4, 5, 6 minutes, it just depends on how wide of a noodle you're using. I'm using kind of a thinner noodle, not typical really of pad thai. It's what I have in my pantry, so I'm just going to use it. And a lot of times that's what I do, and you should do at home. You know, they're interchangeable. They just might cook a little or faster. These smaller noodles will probably cook in about 4 minutes. And then what I'm going to do is cool them off, just run some cold water over them and stop the cooking process, put a little bit of vegetable oil on them, and they'll be ready for my pad thai. They should be al dente, even a little harder than al dente, like when you cook pasta. To the tooth is what that means. So, you know, if they're soft when you take them out of the water, they're going to fall apart when you make your pad thai. And that's one thing that I just can't stand, is a mushy noodle pad thai. And I've gotten it in restaurants like that because they overcook the noodles. So we're going to make sure they don't overcook. I'm going to get a strainer really quick because I'm going to need that. So remember, boil your water, shut it off, add your noodles, wait about 5 minutes and test them to see if they're still a little bit hard. And then we're going to shock them with cold water so they stop cooking. Question?
I got three actually real quick ones. Can I use avocado oil, grapeseed oil instead of olive oil? Will that affect the taste of the dish?
Yes. In fact, olive oil I don't use for this dish. Typically, the reason I don't use olive oil for Thai cuisine is because it does throw the flavors off to me. It's not typically used in Thai cuisine, so I just keep it out. I use olive oil for everything else, but I'm using vegetable oil, any neutral oil, canola. Avocado won't really throw the flavors off. It actually goes well with it. Grapeseed will be fine too. And they're high heat oils, which means they won't burn really quick. Go ahead.
Two people ask, I pre-cook my noodles, or can I use pre-cooked noodles?
Absolutely.
Can I still use them, or should I put them in water?
No, pre-cooked, just use them. Don't do anything with them. Put them in boiling waters because I have the dehydrated ones. These are dried noodles right out of the pack.
And one last one here. Can you use an Instant Pot on saute setting?
Probably. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big Instant Pot person. I have to use it to cook rice, so there you go. But it might not be hot enough. You could try all you have work, but not like it should. You know, really meant to be done in a hot pan. So that would either be, I mean, you could use cast iron, you know, or a saute pan. I'll be right back. I'm going to grab a saute pan so you can see, because you guys might not know exactly what I'm talking about. So I want to show you some other alternatives that you can use. So,
You want me to change the camera?
no, I could show them right here. So you got one of these kind with the handle, and you got one of these, you know, saute pan. Those will work just fine. They're not going to work exactly like a wok, because a wok is meant to get hot all the way around, and then, you know, kind of, you know, cook evenly throughout. So the heat is up the sides as well as the bottom. First, there's another question coming in, but first I'm going to drop my noodles into the water. So it came to a boil, so I shut it off. So the water is now off, and I'm just going to let the noodles sit in there. And I'm actually going to set a timer, because if I don't, and I get to talking to you guys and answering questions, I'm probably going to forget, and I do not want to overcook them. So I'm going to set my timer, since these are smaller noodles, on 6 minutes. And then I'm going to check them. So did we have another question, Paul?
Actually, 4.
All right, go ahead.
One is actually 5. Is sesame oil okay?
Sesame oil is going to really change the flavor of the dish quite a bit, but not necessarily in a bad way. So I would say use it if it's all you have, or use a little bit of sesame oil if you like that flavor in conjunction with some other type of oil. You could even use butter. Butter is not a bad thing to use in Thai cuisine if you want to add a little yourself. But sesame oil is really going to make it strong in that flavor. Plus, I'm going to show you how to do some sesame seeds in with it to get some more of that sesame flavor. So the answer is yes, but not too much.
Okay. Is your water salted that you just put?
You'd never want to salt the water, because we're using fish sauce, soy sauce, salty. No, you don't want to add salt.
Can the saute pans also go in the oven?
I'm sorry?
Can the saute pans also go in the oven?
Can, but you're not going to be able to do a pad thai that way, I don't think.
And then
You're asking me about my saute pans? Yeah, they can go in the oven. They have silicone heat resistant handles that are rated for 500 degrees.
And then Lori asks, in what you're cooking right now, is that a wok with oil or water?
This is water.
And then
all I'm doing is cooking the rice noodles.
And Judith asks, I don't have rice vinegar. Can I use balsamic or white wine vinegar?
You could use white wine vinegar in the place of rice, but if you have just standard white vinegar, that would be the best one to use. So you don't get that wine flavor. I mean, if in a pinch you could use it, but if you just have distilled white vinegar, that would be an okay substitute. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start prepping my vegetables so don't get behind here. So, and there's not a whole lot. I'm just going to show you some stuff, and also how to make the sauce. So I'm gonna move all this stuff up front here. All right, so the first thing I think I'll do is make the sauce. So the sauce, you know, you want to prep it ahead of time. So I'm going to use a mixing bowl here, and what it calls for is the brown sugar. Are you on the cutting board, Paul? Thank you. We're good. So brown sugar first, soy sauce, rice vinegar, lime juice, and fish sauce. So I'm getting my soy sauce, and I'm not measuring. I'm just going to put in about 2.5 tablespoons-ish. Vinegar. And don't forget, I'm doubling the recipe, so 2 tablespoons is what I'm using. Some fish sauce. And this is one of those things that you could add more or less depending on your taste, but it's really salty. So that's another reason why you never want to add salt to this dish, because you got plenty in there, and you definitely don't want to over salt it. I'm going to stir this sauce around, and I'm going to add some lime juice.
Chef, is it okay to use low sodium soy sauce?
Low sodium is better, actually. Use low sodium. That's what I have here. I probably should have mentioned that. Thank you for asking that question. But yes, it's perfectly fine. Everything else has enough salt in it that it's not going to be an issue at all. So yeah, low sodium is always a good thing to purchase. And if you're gluten-free, buy tamari, okay? Because tamari is gluten-free. All right, I'm checking my noodles. They're really close, almost done. So anyway, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to move this over. So I've got a juicer here, and I'm going to do fresh lime juice. You know, or you could use the bottled stuff, but there's nothing better than fresh. I know it takes a little bit of work, but the difference, it's like, you know, night and day, just like fresh squeezed orange juice as opposed to stuff you buy in a store. There's no comparison there, right? Same thing with lime. So I'm going to press some lines in my handy dandy juicer here that I got on Amazon and overpaid for it. At least I feel like I did anyway. But it's a great tool. You have to have a little upper arm strength to use it. Sometimes it gets to be challenging. And you definitely don't want to get your thumb in there when you're pressing down on this.
That would hurt.
Your hitchhiking career would be over for sure. Okay, so, boy, that smells good. Fresh lime juice. So that's all set. I'm going to move the juicer out of the way. Okay, we got questions, but I'm going to do this first. So I'm adding my lime juice into my sauce. And that's the sauce that's going to go into the pad thai. So that's all set and ready to go. The only thing I'll probably add is a little bit of spice to heat it up later on, and I'll talk about that when we get to that point. Go ahead with your questions.
One is, can I substitute liquid aminos instead of soy sauce?
Yeah, liquid aminos are a fine substitution.
Do you have a favorite fish sauce?
Not really. They're all pretty good. This one here is Phu Quoc. It's called fish sauce. Made by, I'm trying to see what I don't know. I can't even read it, but you know, maybe you can. There it is. I'm not going to say this is my favorite one. It's the one I grabbed. I've tasted probably about 4 or 5 different types. Just hit the switch on the side, Paul. Thanks. My alarm went off. And I can't tell the difference between them. They're all very close. So they all smell like fishy, stinky, you know. You definitely don't want to drink that stuff. It's good in a dish. You know, sparingly, or like put a little bit in your ramen when you're eating it, stuff like that, but don't overdo it. All right, so I'm taking my noodles because they're done. Alarm went off, 5 minutes. They're still kind of hard, which is good. That's what I wanted. And I'm just over here basically straining them and running cold water on them just to stop the cooking process. So I'm going to cool them off. Sorry you can't see this part, but I'll be right back. I'll show you how to oil them. Kind of like what you would do with pasta, is oil it up once it's cooked. Okay, so there we go.
Question is what kind of oil?
I'm going to use the same oil that I'm using to cook, so that's vegetable oil. If you're using some other kind of oil, you can. The moral of the story is with Thai cuisine, or most Asian, is use neutral oils, ones that don't have strong flavor. You don't want to overpower the other flavors. You want them all to come through. So there's my noodles cooked. I've cooled them off. I'm squirting some vegetable oil on. I'm going to toss them a little bit. And if I put one of these in my mouth, it's going to be a little bit hard. It's definitely going to be a little bit more hard than I would pasta, because rice noodles cook differently than pasta. They cook really fast. So, once you get them in a hot wok, they could disintegrate really, really quickly. Okay, so I've got my noodles cooked. Sure, go ahead. I'm going to cut garlic while I'm answering questions.
Okay, Chef, you have two quick questions. One is, I have oyster sauce that I've used in another recipe. Is that okay to use for fish sauce, or should I just go ahead and buy the fish sauce?
So you don't have fish sauce?
They have oyster sauce.
Oyster sauce is quite a bit different. You could use a little bit. I'm not going to say it would ruin the dish, but it's definitely going to change the flavor profile of this dish. And maybe not in a bad way for you, but for me, this pad thai is what it is. It's like one of those, classic French dishes that you make. I don't mess around much with the flavors. But if you added it, it wouldn't be a deal breaker, but it is going to change it quite a bit. So you might want to just leave it out. I don't think it's going to be a terrible thing if you don't have it in there. Really it just adds a little bit of a fishy kind of flavor and salt. So you might have to substitute something that's a little salty. Oyster sauce tends to be really sweet too, so you have to kind of think about that.
And is there a low sodium fish sauce?
Gosh, I've never seen one. There might be. If there was, I probably wouldn't be able to read the label anyway, but I get all my stuff at Sunrise Market here in Knoxville. It's this big Asian supermarket. And, just walking down the aisles trying to figure out what stuff is a challenge. So, I haven't seen it. I could certainly look into it, but I don't think so.
And then one quick question. Somebody asked if you could just do a real quick rundown again of the ingredients, just to make sure they have everything.
Yeah, I'll run down everything before we start. So don't worry about that. Before we start actually cooking, I'll do that part for you. So right now I'm just prepping. So I've got my garlic chopped up. I'm just doing my preparation. I've got a red pepper here that I'm going to slice into strips. So I'm just cleaning it up. I like to take my pepper and kind of pull the seeds out, just like that. Pull the ribs, just like that. Okay. I'm going to put a little sharpen on my knife, I think. Okay, cut my pepper in half. Thin strips. And I know your knife at home is this sharp, right? Safe knife is a sharp knife. Remember that. A dull knife is a dangerous knife. I think that's enough. So I'm just going to leave them just like that in strips. Okay, I've got green onion. These have already been washed.
I'm going to ask real quick, are there any tips on cutting as well as you do?
Yes, take my knife skills class. There's a lot of tips. I mean, there's a lot of ways of doing it. Knife skills is something that's really hard to teach in about 2 seconds on a video. But, long story short, use the claw. So hold your hand like this, tuck your thumb in, hold your food this way, and use your knuckles as a guide. And then this rocking motion is really the way to go as far as speeding up. So most of your cuts will be done that way. So if you watch me, see how I've got my claw keeps me from cutting my fingertips. And I'm also guiding the knife so that I get accuracy. Those are the two biggies. I mean, my first knife skills class, that's all that people learn how to do other than dicing and stuff like that. But they really have to learn this and this. Those are the two most important things. Hope that helps. So I separated my white part of my green onion from my green, and I'll explain that in a little bit. I've also got cilantro here, and this is cilantro, C-U-L-A-N-T-R-O. It's kind of an Asian version of your typical leafy cilantro that you see that looks kind of like Italian parsley. This one doesn't. It's a long leaf, if you could see it. It's a little bit milder, and it's definitely perfect for any kind of Asian cuisine. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this into little ribbons. It's called a chiffonade, really. Thin cuts. Just like that, pushing it off to the side. See how I'm getting all my ingredients? This is how you want to cook. You want to have everything in front of you ready to go before you ever even think of turning the heat on. That's the way to do it. So I've got 4 eggs here. I'm going to crack them into a bowl because you never want to crack your eggs directly into the wok. And I know you know why you shouldn't do that. Because if you do, you're probably going to get shells. Notice also that I'm cracking on a flat surface, not against the bowl, the edge of the bowl. When you do this, you drive the shell into the egg, which not only helps to get eggs in your or shells in your food, but sometimes it'll crack the yolk as well. In this case, it doesn't matter because we're cracking it anyway. But if you're doing nice eggs or fried eggs or something that you want that yolk intact, you want to definitely tap on a flat surface. So I've got my eggs. I'm going to whisk them up a little bit. This is all part of the pre-preparation. Hope everybody's doing okay out there.
Somebody asked about your cutting board. What's the measurement of that nice cutting board you got?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Big, about 2 feet by maybe 1.75 feet, something like that. I mean, this is my small one. A friend of mine made it locally here. He makes cutting boards just on the side, and you know, he made one for my house that's 6 feet long, and I think 2.5 or whatever the width of the depth of a countertop is. And I have it in my kitchen at home, and it covers the entire countertop, made out of this material, which is really cool. It looks great, and now I can cut everywhere on my countertop. I don't care about countertops. I want cutting board. So anyway, peeling a carrot. Yep.
Yeah, 4 quick questions, Chef. One is they couldn't get green onions at the grocery store. Can you do without it?
Yes. You can, but you know, green onions add a serious component to this dish. Is it going to ruin the dish? No, but it adds a nice freshness. I would substitute white onion or red onion or what other kind of onion you have, but I'd make sure it goes into the dish as it's cooking. I'm going to use the green tops as a garnish at the end. It's almost like sprinkling parsley on something. It adds that nice freshness to the end of the dish, along with the cilantro. So. But use regular onion if you have it. If you don't worry about it. You'll be okay.
2 people ask about what could be substituted for cilantro.
There's really not a whole lot of substitution for cilantro. You could put some Italian parsley in, but you know, cilantro is what it is. So it's that flavor in and of itself. As far as you know, you could use like ground coriander if you want to. That's like the seed of cilantro. We'll give you a little bit of that flavor, or dried cilantro, or just omit it. People just can't stand it anyway, and they don't put it in. But again, that adds a nice freshness to the dish, and it's one of those things. It's just a standard component in pad thai. So almost every pad thai will have it.
Well, you got a whole lot of cutting board questions all of a sudden, Chef, because they saw that gorgeous cutting board. Yeah. They want to know where they can get one from and how often do you clean it? What oil do you use to season it?
Okay. Well, while I'm answering those questions, I'm going to be cutting carrots. So where to get them? I'm just going to slice these into matchbooks, size, kind of match size, Matchstick, not book. So I'm slicing. I don't think the guy's making them anymore that I got it from. He, you know, he's just a retired Air Force guy, and I don't think he's doing it. But there are some local companies and companies in Tennessee that will make these out of the 5 different woods, or you can get whatever kind of wood you want. You're probably going to pay a little more than I did, but, you know, you could find them. You just have to look. You're not going to find it on Amazon. You're going to have to find some local woodworker. And I know they're out there. I've seen them. As far as how to maintain it, keep it oiled. You could use mineral oil or, you know, just a butcher block oil. And you want to oil it when it starts looking like it's getting dry. Otherwise, it's going to chip and pit when you cut on it. Right now, it's porous and soft. And as long as the wood is soft, if you think about it, you know, try taking an axe and chopping, you know, a block of wood, you know, or a piece of wood while it's still wet. It's not going to do anything. But when it's dry and you hit it with the axe, it splits, right? Well, the same thing with a cutting board. If it gets dry and you're cutting on it, you're going to take little notches and chips out of the wood. So you want to keep it moist. So that's where block oil comes in. So don't use olive oil or something like that. You know, it really has to be some kind of butcher block oil, mineral oil, like I said. Anything like that. That won't go rancid when it sits on there for days and days. Hope that answered the question.
Yep, I got one more for you. Got one more for you, Chef. Actually, 2 people asked the same question. What is the brand name of the lime juicer?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. Here, let me see if it's got one on it. Of course it doesn't.
Is that the one?
Shoot me an email if you can. You know, get my email address. Maybe Paul can type it in the chat or something. Shoot me an email somewhere down the road, and I'll get it for you. I got it on Amazon, I think, so I could probably just go on there and look it up. I've had it for years, but I think they keep the orders in there for quite a while.
If you have more questions, be sure to put them into the question and answer section as opposed to the chat. So that way it's a little bit easier for us to. Yeah, that way. I don't want to miss any. So appreciate that.
Exactly. There's a lot of you, and that's okay. I don't mind the questions, but we don't want to miss anybody. And I could do 2 things at once. So I can talk, cut carrots, and keep my fingers intact. Usually. Hopefully. So. All right, so I've got a nice stack of carrots here. I've also got some peanuts, just dry roasted peanuts. I'm going to chop these up. These are going to be kind of a garnish for the end of the dish. I've actually even taken, and you can do this if you're a peanut butter lover, you could actually take a tablespoon of peanut butter and throw it into your pad thai towards the end, or actually, I'm sorry, not towards the end. I was thinking of something else. You could take some peanut butter if you like that flavor and put it into your pre-made sauce that we just made with the soy sauce and everything. And that would be actually, somebody asked about, you know, the brown sugar thing. The peanut butter would add a sweetness and a creaminess to the sauce as well. So that might be a good substitute for some of the sugar.
Real quick question too about the eggs. Are eggs necessary for this dish?
They're not necessary, but again, they're a part of the traditional pad thai. So can you make it without it? But it's not going to be, you know, your traditional pad thai. All these flavors are meant to go together in a certain way. So, you know, you can always change a recipe to whatever you want to change it to, but you're going to take it to a point where it's a stir fry and not a pad thai anymore if you take too much of the stuff out. So, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, you know, you're switching it from pad thai to something else. I'm going to try a carrot. Paul's laughing at me. I'm hungry. I haven't had breakfast yet. He's laughing at me over here. All right. So I've got soy sauce here. I might need a little bit more while I'm cooking. If not, I won't add it. I'm going to get the rest of this stuff out of the way. I didn't even think that. I'm probably crunching in their poor ears right now. All right, so one other thing I'm going to do, and then I'll run down the ingredients for you. I've also got some red chili paste. That's this stuff. It's called red chili sauce or paste, and it's really good, but it's got a heat to it, so you have to keep that in mind. I've got some on my finger. Let me go wash my hand off the red chili paste. It will add heat to the dish. So that's where, like, when you go to a restaurant and they ask you, you know, how you want it, how you want your pad thai. Do you want it hot, you know, medium hot, really hot kind of thing? That's what is usually added. You could also use red pepper flakes or nothing at all. But I like a little spice to mine. So I'm going to add some. And I'm talking for a double batch, for double this recipe, about 2 teaspoons. That's going to give it a nice spice. That's if you like that kind of flavor, you like some spice, and you don't mind a little bit of heat, go ahead and do it. If you don't want that, don't do it. You know, just leave it out totally. So that's one of the things that pad thai usually see it being served. This will either be on the table, you can mix it in after it's made, or you can mix it in during, like in a restaurant where they'll give you different degrees of heat. Typically, each degree of heat, mild, medium, hot, super hot, equates to about a half to a teaspoon of this for each level. So you just keep adding more in those increments pretty much.
A real quick question. What can be substituted for bean sprouts?
Oh, thanks. Somebody just reminded me of the bean sprouts. I love people. I love my customer. You know, I love you guys. I kind of forgot about the bean sprouts totally. So here they are. What can be substituted? Any kind of sprout, you know, snap peas or some kind of a pea maybe, things like that. You know, even beans could be substituted, but I would slice them like thin into strips, kind of like what I have here with the carrots. But, you know, they are what they are, so it's really hard to say exactly what. I wouldn't use canned. I'd rather use something fresh. But I have fresh sprouts here that I bought at the Asian market, and these go bad really fast, and sometimes they're hard to find. So if you could find fresh, that's great. But keep them in cold water in the refrigerator. They'll last about a week to 10 days. If you leave them in the bag, they'll last about 1 to 2 days, and then they get brown and soggy. So these are sitting in the water, and they love water, okay? They look at, see how crisp that is? It just snaps. So that's perfect. That's what I want. So I've got my bean sprouts. Thank you for reminding me. I might have forgot those. Okay, so I've got that. Let me see. I've also got chicken that's going into the, I'm going to move this stuff out of the way so I don't get chicken on it. And I'm going to cut up my chicken. So this dish has chicken and shrimp. You could do either or you could do different seafood in it if you wanted to. Scallops, something like that. I'm just going to clean some of the fat off of here. And I'm going to cut this, kind of butterfly it in half. Cut it into strips. And then cubes. So it cooks fast. And we get chicken in throughout the dish. Not just one big piece.
Real quick question, Chef, while you're cooking or slicing. On the cilantro, the recipe says cilantro. It said chef used a non-leafy cilantro. Can I use leafy cilantro?
Absolutely. The difference in the flavor is almost going to be non-distinguishable for you, so don't worry about it. Either one is fine. I just like using the Thai version, you know, because it's Thai for one thing, and it's kind of cool. You know, people aren't used to seeing that one. So I introduce it in the class. But yeah, just regular old cilantro is just perfectly fine.
As you're cleaning your knife, Christina asked, does Chef John have a favorite knife brand?
Yeah, I like Shun, S-H-U-N. It's a Japanese knife, very sharp, very hard angle on the blade, so it's kind of brittle in that, you know, you have to be careful when you're cutting really hard objects. But Shun makes a variety of different knives too, so the one I have is a Premier. I've also got a standard Shun. They're both very sharp. They're made out of the same material and the same way that samurai swords are made. So they're, needless to say, they're sharp. This is my Shun Premier. And you can see how the steel is forged. Then I've got a Shun Classic. And if you compare them, okay, this Classic here is a little bit more heavy duty. It's got a bigger blade. It's got a different type of handle on it. It's better for cutting harder vegetables and things like that. This one you could actually bend the Premier. So those are my two favorites. I do have others.
Chef, you mentioned earlier about pad thai and stir fry. Question is, what's the difference? Is it the seasoning or in the noodles?
The dish. It's you're stir frying pad thai. So pad thai is actually a dish. Stir fry is a cooking method. That's the difference. I also wanted to show you another knife. This is a Miyabi. This one I found as I was traveling. They're really hard to find, and you can see this isn't printed metal. This is actually the metal. The way they forged it. Pretty cool. So, you can get them at Williams Sonoma has them. The shun knives. Definitely, a good knife in your collection is always important to have. With the shun, I would get at a minimum the chef knife, and whichever one fits in your hand good. Go to the store and hold it and see if it feels good. And the paring knife. Those two knives are a must. The rest of them, who cares? I don't really use them. So,
real quick question, point from Robin. A great question. What are you using to clean the chicken off the board? And I think she's referring to your scraper.
Yep. So, not the scraper. I actually, what I used was a paper towel to wipe everything off, and then I used a towel with sanitizer on it, and then I wiped it again with a paper towel. At least I think I did, but it looks dry. It should be drying off, and just let that kind of dissipate. And the sanitizer I use is just a bleach water solution, and just let it dissipate, and it's done. So what I'm doing now, if you come over to the wok, Paul, I'm just warming up my wok. I'm going to toast some sesame seeds real quick, because toasted sesame seeds are delicious in this dish. If you don't want to use them, or you could just use regular old sesame seeds, but toasting them brings out the oil and the flavor in them. And I'm literally just going to toast them for a few seconds. And there they are. They're done. And they're going to go in the dish at the end or on top as a garnish. I'm going to knock the rest of them out of there. Okay, so I'm going to run down the ingredients for you guys because I know you want to do that. So you should have your cooked noodles over here, Paul. Yeah, put me on the board. You should also have a plate in front of you, your wok ready to go. So I've got my cooked noodles right here. I've got my shrimp, peeled, deveined, tails off. My chicken breast, cut into cubes. I'm going right down the recipe. My brown sugar, soy sauce, rice vinegar, lime juice, and fish sauce are all mixed together into this bowl, which is my pad thai sauce. Some like more sauce, some like less. That's up to you. And if you tasted this, let me find a spoon. It's going to be salty, kind of a little bit fishy goodness with a little hint of sweet too. That's why you've got the sugar in there.
A few people asked about the brown sugar. How much?
Oh, that's wonderful. In your recipe, it calls for 2 tablespoons of dark brown sugar. You could use light too. And if you ever run out of brown sugar and you have regular, granulated sugar and molasses, mix them together and you got brown sugar pretty much. So, you get that kind of molasses kind of flavor into this dish, which really is wonderful. I've also used palm sugar in pad thai before, and you can find palm sugar in a lot of Asian supermarkets and stuff. It's a good substitute, but it's probably not something that you carry in your kitchen typically. Okay, so I've got my sauce there. Also, I've got my bell pepper cut up, red, green, yellow, whatever you want to use. I like red. They're a little bit on the sweeter side. I've got my carrots cut into like matchstick size. That's important. You don't want them big chunks or it's going to be totally raw. But you're going to see that you get varying textures, and that's really important in Asian cuisine, is that some things are crunchy, some are a little softer. So you're going to get, texture and mouthfeel are as important as flavor and appearance in this type of cuisine, and in my opinion, in all. My garlic chopped up right here, about 4 cloves worth. 2 green onions. I think I used 4, but 2 green onions. I've got the greens and the white part separated. I've got my bean sprouts over here, probably way more than I need, so I'll just throw in what I think I'm going to need. And then I've got cilantro right here, kind of chiffonade or little strips. I've got peanuts that have been roughly chopped right here, and these are just dry roasted, unsalted peanuts. If you use salted, it's okay, but again, there's a lot of salt in this dish, so I use unsalted roasted peanuts. The recipe says you could use red pepper flakes and sesame seeds. I'm substituting the red pepper flake for this garlic, pepper sauce that you can get from an Asian market. I think even Walmart sells this stuff. And I've already toasted my sesame seeds. If you don't want to toast them, you could certainly just use them. But if you smell them after you toast them, it's got a wonderful kind of nutty, you can smell the oils in it. It almost smells like sesame oil, but really kind of subtle. So I think that's it. That's all our ingredients. Cooking it is simple, and it takes about maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So how we all doing? Any questions before I start the dish? We've got lots of time, so hammer away.
A question from Christina. What would be the reason to separate the green onions?
Because the white part of the onion tastes and has a different texture than the green part. So typically what I do is for the tops of the onion, the green, I'll put that in towards the end of a dish, or after the dish is done, just sprinkle it on top. I'm going to do both in this case. The white, I'm actually going to cook into the dish. That's the difference.
Just another comment. Somebody looked up the juicers on Amazon. They say it looks like a Zulu professional citrus juicer or a Viva Home heavy-duty commercial. They all look alike to me, but yeah, there's a...
They all work.
Yeah.
This one cost about $40 if that helps. But, it's a commercial grade one. So, if you do a lot of juicing, it's a pretty cool thing to have. So I would say it's worth $40. Grab one. This one's metal. It's heavy. If it gets good ratings and stuff, I'd say go for it. It doesn't have to be the same brand. There's a lot of different brands out there.
We've got 3 questions. I'm not sure I'm reading this right, so I'm going to butcher this. Sambal Olik or sriracha sauce for the red pepper sauce?
Sambal Olik or sriracha. You could use either or. I would take the sambal over the sriracha. Sriracha has a very distinct flavor to it that can really seriously overpower a pad thai. Can you use it? Yes, you can. And if you love it, go for it. But the sambal is going to be closer to the garlic paste that I'm using. So either one of those would work. Just be careful unless you like really, really hot food. A lot of people add it after they get it on their plate. They taste it first. Me personally, if you add too much, you destroy all these other flavors going on. You should be able to taste the chicken. You should be able to taste the shrimp. Pad Thai is not made to be over spicy. We make it that way in the States because that's what we like. We like spicy and hot, but it's not really meant to be that.
Is the amount of ingredients correct on the shopping list that you can print out?
Yes.
And that's in a PDF format, so you can just print it right out. Yep.
But you can go right off the recipe. I mean, that's the most accurate. I could make a typo on the shopping list for sure. It's more accurate to just, if you're making it for 2, follow the recipe. If you're making it for 4, double the ingredients and purchase that much. So
this one,
always better to go by the recipe.
I think you answered this earlier, but there's another one that ties into it. Can I use a regular fry pan if I don't have a wok? And then another person asked, do you have a recommendation for a good wok? Looking for a 14-inch with flat bottom.
Yeah, I mean, not really. I like this one here. This is actually an Amusa, so it's not an expensive brand, but it's like cast iron. If you look at it, it's heavy. It's got a Teflon coat though, so if you don't want Teflon and you want a heavy stainless, you can do that too. But you have to really make sure those are really hot. And when you add your food, you have to give them some time. You don't want to start stirring right away because it sticks. So you have to let it cook a little bit and then it'll release and then you can go. And that's really even with Teflon, even with grilling, you know, that's a big mistake people make when they grill fish and stuff is they try to flip it before the fish gets hot enough. And the surface of the food should meet the surface of the cooking, you know, apparatus, and that will release and then you could flip, do whatever you want with it. So there's a lot of different woks out there. Some, you know, are $200, $300. Some are 20, 30 bucks. Some are 10. You know, this is about a $38, $40 wok, and it's just fine for what we do in the school here, but I'm sure there are much better ones.
Okay. Two people ask about, is it okay to use toasted sesame seeds from the grocery store rather than toasting them yourself?
Yep, absolutely. You can use pre-toasted, let the grocery store do all the work.
And then you mentioned earlier that you thought your juicer was overpriced. Why do you think it was overpriced?
Did I say it was overpriced? If I said it was overpriced. No, I don't think it was overpriced. I don't know, maybe 30, 40 bucks for a good heavy juicer is fine.
What kind of vinegar did you use for the sauce?
Rice vinegar.
Is pepper sauce the same as Asian chili garlic sauce?
They're called many different things. And if you walk down an Asian supermarket aisle, you're probably going to see about anywhere from 40 to 50 different names for the same thing. So red chili sauce can be the same as garlic chili sauce. You're just going to have to look at the ingredients. Does it have garlic in it? Does it not? So, you know, but typically red chili garlic paste or sauce are pretty much the same. They vary a little bit between brands. Then you have sambal lek that's a little bit hotter. It doesn't have as much garlic in it. It's kind of a different flavor. You know, then you have your sriracha, and then there's a myriad of other types of sauce that you can use. I mean, there's just hundreds of them. I'm not even exaggerating. Maybe thousands. I don't know. So if you ever get a chance to, if you're ever in Knoxville or if you're from Knoxville, go to a Sunrise Supermarket on Kingston Pike, and you'll be like, okay, now I know what Chef was talking about. You're going to be overwhelmed by the amount of different types of red pepper sauces they have out there. That it on questions?
I know. What other options are there to shellfish in the recipe? I know you're using chicken right now.
So keeping the shellfish out of it, there's not a lot. I mean, you could use a good fatty fish in it, something that won't deteriorate, like swordfish. You know, salmon probably wouldn't work too good. I'm trying to think. Swordfish would definitely work. Monkfish would work because that's got almost that lobster kind of consistency to it. Halibut would probably work. So any fish that's got a high fat content in the flesh, tuna definitely would work. You know, you could do like just cut your tuna into squares and substitute the shrimp for the tuna. That would be fine too.
Is it okay
if you don't want to do either?
Can you use frozen shrimp in the recipe as long as they're already deveined, or does the frozen ones always come with a shell on them?
Well, they don't always come. Shrimp comes in many different forms, and usually it's frozen. If you buy it in Tennessee, it's either frozen or it has been. So, you know, when you go to the grocery store like Kroger or something, you look in the case and you see all this fresh shrimp in there. It's pretty much the stuff they get in the bags that are out in the freezer. They just open a bag and dump it in the case, basically. So you're still dealing with frozen. So I guess the answer to that question is you could buy them peeled and deveined. You could buy them whole with shell on. You could buy them peeled and deveined without the tail or with the tail. Those are the kind of the ways you could buy them. And that's just, you could use any or all of those. But if you buy whole unpeeled, you're going to need to peel and devein them prior to making the pad thai. If you want to leave the tails on for appearance, you can do that. But, you know, a lot of times I leave the tails on, but not in pad thai, just because it gets mixed into the dish. And I don't want anybody grabbing a piece of shrimp and eating the tail on it and, you know, complaining about it or choking. Worse yet.
How about, can you substitute cashews for peanuts?
Yes, you can substitute cashews. They're a little bit different, but they're okay.
Let's see, somebody asked about the shopping list PDF. I believe that link is in your registration email that you clicked on to access a class from Zoom. I think towards the top, there's a link that says recipe, and on that is your shopping list and the whole recipe.
Absolutely. So your recipe and shopping list should be there. If you have any trouble with that, let us know.
Can I use boneless, skinless chicken thighs instead of chicken breast?
Absolutely, you could use chicken thighs. In fact, they're commonly used. You know, a lot of this stuff stems from peasant food, like a lot of dishes do. So, you know, the dark meat was always least expensive, therefore used quite frequently in these dishes. So yes, the answer is yes, or a combination of both.
Lots of ingredient questions here. What about tofu? Could I use tofu?
Yes, you can use tofu. You'll saute it just like you'll pan-sear it just like the chicken. Treat it just like the chicken. You could either marinate it. If you marinate the tofu, be careful you don't have a strong salty marinade, or just add it. And I would use medium to firm tofu, not soft, because it could disintegrate in the dish.
What about red snapper? Can you use red snapper?
Absolutely, you could use red snapper. You might have to, with a fish like that, you'd probably want to cook the fish off, remove it, make your pad thai, and serve it with it, if that makes sense. If you add it to it, what's going to happen when you're stir frying is any kind of fish that's, you know, flaky is going to fall apart. That's why I said swordfish. Those kind of fish, it'll stay together. It's almost like the consistency of chicken. You know, it's really fatty and really hearty kind of fish. Flaky fish will fall apart, so you might want to just serve that with it on the side or on top.
One more. I didn't see sesame seeds on the list, but I have some. How much do I toast?
For the recipe, I would do a tablespoon-ish. Is that good? Wow, that was it? No more questions? Wow, okay. I thought they were going to wear me out.
Got one more.
Oh, here comes.
Got one more. Last minute entry, chef.
Yeah.
I make vegetarian pad thai with tofu and some nice mushrooms. Okay, that really wasn't a question.
Oh, okay. That was a statement.
It was a statement.
You know what? That's good. Mushrooms can go in it. They don't typically go in a pad thai, but absolutely. I mean, I love mushrooms, so hey, go for it. But you know, it's like anything else. You know, it is what it is. It's meant to be that. If it's not that, it's not pad thai. So, you know, you could throw all kinds of ingredients in this and make it delicious, but then you can't really call it pad thai on a menu, so to speak, because now you're taking it to something else. So, but mushrooms would be wonderful in this. You know, shiitakes for sure, enoki, any kind of oyster mushroom, something like that you can get out of an Asian market is wonderful addition to this dish. Absolutely. So go for it. Have fun.
And on the shrimp, if you use shrimp in it, you're using shrimp, do you cut it up or you put it in whole?
I'm putting it in whole. Yeah, I mean, if you have really big shrimp, you might want to cut them up. I've got, these are 30, 40s or something like that. So like 30, 40 to a pound. So they're not really big. If you have really big ones, you can cut them into 3 pieces if you want, just so, you know, everybody gets some shrimp in the dish and you don't have these big, huge shrimp in there. But big, huge shrimp is not necessarily a bad thing either. So they cook really fast. So it's not going to be like, it's not going to hurt you when you're doing your stir fry. We good?
One more about the soy sauce. The recipe says a certain amount. You use a different amount, maybe. They would just ask about, you know, what's the right amount. And I think you said earlier more to flavor.
Well, no. I made the sauce ahead of time. So the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. So that's what you should use. I doubled my recipe. So I'm making 2 times this recipe. So all my ingredients are doubled. So I used about 3.5 to 4 tablespoons in mine. That's why I have so much sauce here. Quite a bit left. I've got less. I've got about 1.5 cups of sauce right there. So that it? All right, we're ready to cook. Let's do it. Okay. So in order to cook this dish, you want to get your wok really hot. So Paul's going to put me over to the wok cam. That is a thing, wok cam. I'm going to take a sip of coffee.
All right.
We're gonna knock this thing out.
You're walking.
We're walking. All right. So heat up on high. This will not take long to heat up. How do I get it in the middle, Paul? There it is.
There you go.
That's my OCD talking right there. You might want something to stir with. I like using a spatula such as this, just because I'm using a Teflon lined pan. Now I'm going to be removing the chicken once I cook it, so I'm grabbing a bowl to put that chicken in. And I can see my wok is hot. It's starting to smoke a little bit. I'm going to add my oil. I'm going to throw my chicken in. I'm going to move it, but I'm not going to, see how it's sticking right now? Like I said before, you want to let it release. So don't feel like you want to stir it right now. Just let it cook. If it starts to smoke too much, turn your heat down. A heavier wok will cook better than a light wok, a thin metal wok. So you want a good heavy one that distributes the heat, just like cast iron, all the way through the wok. So that's the first step. Add your chicken, cook until cooked through, get a little browning on the outside, and then remove from the pan. The recipe says 6 minutes. Time to me on a recipe doesn't mean a whole lot unless I'm baking. So basically I cook with my eyes and my senses. So look, see, the chicken has released. It's not sticking and it's turning brown. So I'm just going to move it around and then let it cook a little more. Also in wok cooking, you're layering flavors. So the flavor of the chicken in the pan is going to, come into the rest of the dish. So you don't want to clean your wok in between. And if it sticks a little bit to the bottom, that's okay. Leave it on there. That's all flavor.
Real quick, Chef, on the temperature of the wok, how do you know when it's hot? And if you're using an electric wok, what setting would you put it on?
Electric wok, almost high. How do you know if it's hot? It'll start smoking a little before you add the oil. Always get your wok hot first, then add your oil. And if you're not sure if it's hot, you'll usually see the oil shimmering. And if it doesn't, take a little piece of chicken or something else and just dip it. And if it starts to sizzle right away, you know it's hot. That's the best way to test it. I've got mine on 3/4 heat right now. I'm not up all the way on my gas burner because I don't want to burn. You don't want to smell that burn smell. A little smoke is okay, but you really don't want it to be burning. Okay, that's not good. So, but you do want some char on your chicken. Get a little bit. If you can see it, it's turning brown. That's all your flavor there. So you don't want your chicken sitting and simmering in a cool pan. You really want it to come up to heat and get a nice char on it. If it looks too dry, add a little bit more oil. That's perfectly fine. And then once this is done, I'm going to take it out and put it into a bowl. And then I'm going to move to my shrimp. So the shrimp will be the next thing. Smelling good already, huh, Paul? What do you think?
Oh, it smells awesome.
I'm going to take a picture here. I'm going to take some. I like posting stuff on my Facebook page, so there we go. Checking my fuel here. Feels like I'm running low. That's just me dropping stuff. I'm using a little portable burner, so that I obviously didn't put a new fuel can in this morning. There we go. Okay. So my chicken's pretty close. It's getting nice and brown. I think it's ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out. Pour it into my bowl. Put my hot wok back on the stove. A little bit of oil. Shrimp. Same thing. I'm going to cook the shrimp till it's done. I'm going to pour it in with the chicken. Then we're going to start with the rest of the ingredients. I just noticed a typo on my recipe. It says add additional opal, O-P-I-L. I think that means oil. So if you see that, see, nobody caught that. You guys are slipping out there in TV land. Somebody should have corrected me on that. Hey, you spelled that wrong. Don't you love it when people do that?
I do it all the time.
Paul does it all the time, but he knows how it gets under my skin. So he does it subtle, like, oh, did you know? Or he just fixes it himself. He doesn't say anything. Okay, so the shrimp's cooking. And you don't want to cook your shrimp from the frozen state. Always thaw it out. And the best way to do it is just to run cold water over it until it's thawed. Definitely do not cook it from frozen. Never cook seafood from frozen. It's going to always get a rubbery kind of consistency to it. Not good. I just strained my bean sprouts. Shrimp's almost done. You don't want to overcook it. When you overcook shrimp, it gets rubbery, so we're not going to let that happen. You can see once you get your little bit of prep work done, which isn't a lot, the cooking part is fun. If you have everything in front of you, you know, it just goes really, really fast. So shrimp's really close. It's going from clear or translucent to opaque. Getting a little bit of char on it. That's what I'm looking for. Coming off. Oops, I lost one. Get back in there. There we go. See all that brown on the bottom? Yum. That's the good stuff right there. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is add some more oil to my wok. I'm going to add my pepper, carrots. They're my harder vegetables. And your wok should never stop cooking. So that's why you want to keep your heat up, okay? Don't knock your heat down too much. Stir these around. Carrots are going to be nice and crispy when they come out. Peppers will be a little softer. So this is going to really come out looking pretty and really flavorful. Now this recipe says to add the bean sprouts pretty soon, but I'm going to wait and add them a little bit towards the end because these fresh bean sprouts cook really fast. So I think I'm going to toss them in right before the noodles. If that looks a little dry, add a little bit of oil. Wow, this is looking good. Any questions? Everybody doing okay?
So far, yeah.
Okay. Don't be afraid to talk to me while I'm doing this. I can stir fry and chat at the same time. And not set off any fire alarms or smoke alarms, which is really important. It's always interesting when I'm teaching one of these classes to a smaller group and they're all up on the screen and you can hear and see them talking. And all of a sudden you hear beep, 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 smoke alarm going off. And then the dog's barking. Rah, rah, rah.
That's always my favorite.
Yeah.
One real quick question somebody had was, how long did you cook the shrimp?
Probably about 2 minutes maybe, but that depends on the heat of your wok and the size of your shrimp. So until they go from clear to pink and opaque is what you're doing. Okay, so my veggies here are done. What I'm going to do now is add my garlic and the white parts of my green onion. A little bit of the green too. And I'm going to stir that up. Let that cook for, I don't know, about a minute.
Patricia asks, as you're going through this, as she's cooking the vegetables or using the wok, that it renders liquid, and should that be drained off?
You really shouldn't be rendering liquid. I'm not sure why that's happening. If you look at mine, I don't have any. Maybe your wok's not hot enough. Or maybe when you threw your shrimp in, your shrimp had water in it. But carrots are pretty dry, onions are dry, and peppers, so there shouldn't be excess liquid in the pan.
Yeah, somebody
it came from the shrimp.
Yeah, somebody else asked, what if you have too much water from the frozen shrimp?
But that might mean your wok's not hot enough. It should steam out. So yeah, just pour it off. You should be, sautéing. You shouldn't be boiling or simmering. So it should be rather dry other than the oil. Okay, so all that's done now. It smells really good. I'm going to push all my vegetables to the side, a little bit of oil, and then I'm going to add my eggs. Okay, so there's my egg. We'll let them cook a little bit. Pretty much everything else is going to go in after the eggs are done, so it's going to go quickly. Get those eggs scrambled just like if you're making breakfast. You never want to add your eggs into the rice noodles or anything like that. You always want to cook the eggs first. Like we teach hibachi, and the same thing with fried rice and stuff. Because if you mix the eggs in with the noodles or the rice, you get a real pasty end result, and you don't want that. You want chunks of egg. So in order to do that, you have to get your eggs cooked ahead of time. And they're definitely cooking. Almost there. Okay, see how my eggs are pretty much even starting to brown a little bit. That's good. Now I'm going to mix it all together. Just like this. Okay. I'm going to throw my sauce in at this point. I'm going to toss in my bean sprouts. Now you're going to have liquid. And there's some liquid in the bottom from the chicken and the shrimp in my bowl. I'm definitely adding that. That's flavor. So now we're done stir frying. Now we're just getting it all together, getting those flavors mixed. So look at that, how beautiful that looks. And then I'm going to add my chili paste. Notice I'm adding all this stuff before the noodles. I'm going to add a little bit of the, not all the cilantro, but a little bit. Stir. Now I'm just heating up. Then the noodles. I've got a lot of noodles here, guys. I know you guys have a lot less than this, but I'm making lots. Which I'm sure will cause a challenge for me stirring it, so I'm just going to kind of toss it around. You want to be gentle with the noodles. You don't want them to break up on you. So kind of work them from the bottom. And you're just heating them up at this point. Everything's pretty much cooked. I think I'm going to maybe need a little bit more soy sauce just because I have so much noodle. So I'm going to go ahead and hit it with a little bit of that. Give it another stir. Oh man, that looks good, doesn't it, Paul?
That looks awesome.
I could eat that.
I wish we had smell-o-vision so they could smell it.
Smell-o-vision. Okay, I shut off the heat because it's cooked at this point, so I don't want to overdo it. And the noodles cooked a little bit more because they're in the heat now, so they should be nice and soft where they should be, but not mushy. Okay. So I'm going to get myself organized here and put a plate together and let you all catch up. Does anybody have any questions or comments or?
One quick question. What is the tool called that you use to touch up the sharpness of your knife?
It's called a steel, a butcher steel. And they come in many different types and forms. This one is a round, smooth butcher steel. They also come with ridges. Some of them are made with diamond, where it's actually a sharpener. There's a lot of different types out there.
After you made a bunch of this, how do you store it? Can you store it and eat it again the next day?
Oh, absolutely. It gets better. It's just like pasta. So, just stick it in the fridge. It's good up to 7 days in the refrigerator. And then just heat it up in the microwave or back in a pan. This is yummy stuff. You can hold this. And since you cooked it, the bean sprouts, once you cook it, you kill all those enzymes in the sprouts that cause them to go bad, so they'll hold up.
So what's reheating instructions?
Pop in a microwave and hit that button. I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes for a bowl full, or in a saute pan until it's hot.
So, question from Mary is, how hot should this be right now? Is it just warmed up, or should it be?
It's hot.
It's hot. Susan asks, when should we add the red pepper flakes?
Oh, I did the chili sauce, as I said in the beginning, but I added that when I added the sauce. But you could add it now and just mix it in if you want. That was like kind of when the sauce was going in to the dish. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that, but. So I'm plating mine up so y'all can see it. I'm just trying to make it a little bit pretty here, because that's what us chefs do.
Somebody said for them there's a lot of oil. Probably a little bit too much from them. Any recommendation on how to limit how much oil's in the dish?
Yeah, just knock it down if it seems like it's too much. Just decrease the amount of oil. That's one of those things that, not every recipe I write is going to be perfect for everybody. So really, it's one of those skill things that you just have to kind of know as you're cooking that, oops, that looks like it might have too much oil for me. I'm going to back it off a little, because you could always add more oil towards the end of the dish. You don't have to just dump it in there blindly because the recipe says so. And that's how I teach people here in my classes, not only how to follow a recipe, but how also to take a recipe and make it your own, because that's important. Otherwise you're at the mercy of whoever wrote that thing, and 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be to your liking. So you can go on website, or on Google and Google how to make pad thai and probably get about 500 5-star recipes, and not a one of them is going to be alike. So, really the moral of the story is learn how to adjust as you cook using your senses. So here's my dish. I'm going to take a little bit of cilantro and sprinkle it, a little bit of green onion tops, peanuts. They add a wonderful crunch and flavor to the pad thai, and some of my sesame seeds. And that's the finished dish. And this kitchen is smelling really awesome right now. What do you think, Paul? I'm just throwing the extra.
Oh, it's incredible.
This is our eating pad thai over here. But yeah, wonderful dish. It's on the healthier side. If you use tamari, it's gluten-free. Because rice noodles don't have gluten in them. It's just a nice dish. There's enough for 2 people right here, or 1 Paul.
Yeah, that's a Paul size serving.
It's a Paul serving right there. So what do you think? Comments, questions?
Yeah, Judy says yum. Let's see. Karen says looks so good. Mary says this has been great. Thank you so much, Chef. Meg says, thank you for another fantastic class. Gwen, thank you. Looks good. Alice, thank you. Lorraine, what a wonderful recipe. Thanks so much. Victoria, Madre, wonderful. Looks fantastic. Thanks so much for the fun and informative instruction. Sharice, really enjoyed the class. My first time. Thank you, Sharice. Debbie, thank you. Lorraine, looks amazing. Great presentation. Thank you. My first class was Chef John. Lots of really good. Can't wait till the next one. My first one too. David says tastes wonderful. Dana, my first class was chef. It was great. Thanks. Pam, thanks for a great class. Very informative. Steve, my first class, wonderful. Lori, thanks, chef. I'm going to make this tonight.
There you go. That was smart. Watch me do it and then make it. Are we going to have a video of, well, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question. And Jane said, great show. Speaking of the show, you can watch us over and over again. I'm pasting the link in the chat box right now for everybody. It will be on AARP page, which I just posted, as well as their Facebook page. So it's right there in the chat.
Awesome. Oh, you guys are great. I loved all the questions, and I was able to keep up, and I'm glad. I hope I got them all. We still have 5 minutes if anybody wants to throw any more questions out at us, but it sounds like overall you all had a good time. I hope I didn't go too fast, but, we did have to squeeze it in an hour and a half, and I think we were successful at that. This pad thai came out perfect. This is definitely an authentic, classic style of pad thai. I can't wait to dive into it because I'm really hungry. Paul's eyeballing it too, It almost looks too pretty to eat, but
somebody said, can you send some right now to Hawaii?
Hawaii, absolutely. If you got a room for me, a free room, I'll be right out.
And then, somebody said, thank you, AARP, for doing these classes. I just posted the link for the recording so everybody can do that. Thanks a lot. When's the next class? I think the schedule is also on those pages.
Month. I'm not sure what the schedule, I forget, but
Tracy posted it earlier.
Type of food that we're doing. And thank you, AARP, for me too. You guys are awesome to work with. They're great people, and thanks for having us because I love doing these. It's one of my favorite, if not the favorite, virtual experience that I have every time. The folks are great. We got big groups. Hopefully the next one will even be bigger. So tell all your friends to log in next month.
Actually, April 28th.
April 28th
is the next class.
So,
yep.
Yeah, tell all your friends. You know what it is, Paul? I can't remember the menu.
I don't have it in front of me.
I'm sure that's online. They're all really exciting, good stuff. All different. I think I don't know if we have some Cajun in there and some other things, but there's going to be a lot of exciting dishes. So by all means, please log in. So I want a couple things to say. So before closing here, and before we end things for today, I want to thank you for taking the time to participate in What's Cooking with AARP, a healthy cooking class for people of all ages to enjoy. You can learn about upcoming cooking classes and other virtual events at aarp.org/TN or follow AARP Tennessee on Facebook. Thanks a lot, everybody. Does anybody else have a final question for me? I still have a couple answers left in me.
Let's see. We got taste goods better than when I've made it before with sauce from a jar.
Well, you know what? But if they said it was better from the jar, I'd probably fall over down here and that'd be the end of it. Yeah, you get stuff in a jar, you read the ingredient label. It's kind of scary, especially anything Asian. They got all kinds of stuff in them that you don't need. So what we used here, and that's what's important. You should have a handle on your ingredients always.
Another good question too. I haven't heard this one before. What would be a good beverage to eat to enjoy with this? What type of beverages would be a good fit?
Beverage. Hold on a second. I'll be right back.
She's saying about not showing any brand.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I can't show a brand. I was told not to do that. So I was going to show you something, but I can't white out the brand on it. So Saute. That's it. Saute. Unless you're looking for, a white wine or something non-alcoholic, whatever you want. But Saute is definitely it. Anything else?
Appreciate you answering all the questions. Enjoy the Q&A very much and the demonstration. Thank you all. My first class. Now I know what to make it look like one you can eat out. Awesome as always. I think we're good. Yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to sign off. Thank you. God bless all of you. Stay safe. Good to see you. Shoot me an email. If you liked our class, also, please don't be afraid to give us a Google review. That always helps us, and it helps us, get some feedback from our customers. So take care, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Our story begins more than 60 years ago inside an abandoned chicken coop where our founder discovered a retired teacher living, no home, no health care. So she said no to this injustice and yes to transforming lives. It's this drive, this compassion that inspired AARP. Today, we empower people to choose how they live as they age. We advocate for health and financial security. We strengthen communities everywhere. We are AARP Tennessee, creating real possibilities.
AARP means a great deal to me. The organization means, for me, an opportunity to serve and help others. For those we serve and help, it means an opportunity for them to have a better life.
To me, AARP means lots of opportunities to learn about aging gracefully.
AARP in Tennessee is concerned with fraud watch. We're concerned about caregiving. We're concerned about livable communities. We're concerned about things that really impact people, especially the 50 plus.
AARP